thinking maybe I need a catchphrase or something. I mean, my videos have at this moment 200 views on average, and I think maybe, so if you want to up this to 1 million, maybe it helps to have a catchphrase or something to open the videos with. I don't know, something like Guten Tag. Maybe that's how I should open all my videos, and then they would actually be successful. Well, either way, today I want to try something new. I'm always so busy talking about the high-level developments that I never get to talk about the actual game development, which is kind of stupid for a devlog. So I want to try to dive into my Twitter timeline, because I put all my progress there in form of animated GIFs, and that will allow me to talk about it nicely, starting with where we left off last time, which was the convention. This was, if you look at the date, the time when this year released. So as for the development of my game, wait a second, here we go. As for the development of my game, the release of this here has not been very good, because of course that has taken me some time to check out, but it's mostly also because I have the perspective of a developer, and I need to decide if I want to port my game to this thing. I always try to keep everything so I can release it on the Switch 1. So my tech stack is very lightweight, and I hope it would work, but I don't know, of course. And it seems that the decision whether I port it to Switch 1 or Switch 2 is done by Nintendo anyways, since they are refusing Switch 2 dev kits, it seems, telling everyone to do Switch 1 instead, which is obviously stupid, because if you've been paying attention lately, Switch ports have had very questionable quality, looking at you, Shinobi. And so it's really on the way out, and you know, if they are doing that with the dev kits now, that means this affects the work like 1 or 2 years out. So okay, Nintendo, okay, you know what you're doing, I'm sure. Anyways, what's next? Yeah, then there was another event that I attended. I didn't think it was worth making another full video about it. Made some stickers. In general, just, you know, I went there with a bit more experience, and I would say it worked out nicely, but you know, the wish list from these events turned out to be very pitiful, and I think the main reason to attend events is to get the player feedback, which has been very fruitful and very useful and very valuable. So I wouldn't say my time there was wasted, but if you think you're going there, finding your audience, then you're also very mistaken as far as game development is concerned. Speaking of which, if you watch my stream, you can see me work on these animated shots, because I'm also working on the trailer, which honestly by now I feel truly that the trailer is as much work as another game would be, and that sounds ridiculous and that feels wrong, but that's how this business is. And just this week I've really realized, you know, I can do my little social media posts, and they're relatively, they get relatively nice traction, I would say, but business-wise, the algorithm cuts you off at some point, and you will never reach a critical mass. That can only be achieved with other individuals, streamers, writers, that kind of thing. And most importantly, the business seems to be that you hit your trailer at the right spot at the right time. So big event sometime, you know, Geoff Keighley level big. So yeah, if I even want to hope to have a shot at that, I need a good trailer, and that's why I put so much work into that. I work with actual animators, and I put a lot of work into the composition part of the trailer, and yeah, it's gonna be necessary, but of course I don't know if I will succeed. I have no idea if the trailer manages to gain any traction whatsoever, because some guy will decide my fate in that regard, which is something I really don't like, since I like control, but that's how this business runs, unfortunately. Which means, well, I'm still gonna be active on social media. It's just important to realize that this is not a viable business, it's more for myself. And also I get a lot of feedback that is very much appreciated. By the way, on that note, I'm really shocked how positive social media has been for me. I think it's because you only talk to other game devs, and those are generally a very cool crowd. But you know, as far as toxicity and stuff like that is concerned, minimal across Reddit, Twitter, Blue Sky. Either way, I'm very surprised how positive everything is, and I really appreciate that a lot. First thing that I had to do after okay, so the demo comes out, you get a lot of feedback from players, from streamers, from whoever, and you have this long of a list of changes that you need to do. You know, you go through the list one by one. It's probably usually pretty easy. Oh, there's a collision here, blah 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 blah. Then you get to an issue that's a very special roadblock, and I feel like this is, you know, as a developer, and I'm sure I'm not alone on this, you often feel like you're a bit of a fraud because you don't really have all the skills that you should, and you just get by, right? But every now and again there comes around an issue that is an actual roadblock that checks if you got it or not. There's no passing this an easy way, because, you know, I've been doing a lot of vibe coding, of course. I think that's a big trend, and it helps me personally. Using AI assistance is what that means, and it helps me personally with things like, you know, setting up scripts, not worrying about syntax, because, you know, I always have to look up, every time I do something I have to look up logical operators because they work differently in most languages, and I'm not a one language guy, and so stuff like this takes me out of my thinking and blocks me for hours. And I never get to the problems that I want to solve, and so vibe coding has been very helpful in that regard. But every now and then an issue comes around and we'll check, do you know what you're doing? And this is one of them. To describe it, I decreased the size of the collision of my character because for the platforming I felt like her box was way too big, you know. If she's this big and then this is the character, you know, then you have effects like you stand in the air and so on the edge, and I didn't want that. And that had the side effect that her model would pass into the geometry of the blocks when she pushed them. So all I wanted to do really is increase the size of her collider at runtime, and it turns out my character controller considers that his domain and no can do. And then not only do I have to write the solution, I actually have to rewrite the entire character controller so I can actually do this. And it takes me all the work to understand all this code that's in there, you know. The AI is hopelessly lost on something like this, of course. That's why it takes me days to get this done, and those are the moments that I really hate when developing something. And every now and again you have something like that, and yeah, nothing you can do about it except for biting through. I'm happy that every now and again when I work on my trailer I can return to stuff like this, which I haven't touched in years. But this is a boss for, I think, the 3rd dungeon, and it's just fun to go there, you know, apply all the new shaders that you've developed in the meantime and so on, and then just see how it works. A lot of stuff in the trailer I just do by composition. Like I said, I work with animators, but they work very slow, and for me as an individual it's pretty expensive to do that, so some things I just have to do with composition, like here. I'm very happy to have discovered Davinci Resolve, which allows me to work like this. I was using OpenShot before, but I would not recommend that software, unfortunately. I feel like development there has stalled and a lot of issues are on the table, and yeah, I need to be able to be very flexible, and the Resolve is unbelievably powerful because, you know, I come also from the time of Adobe, and I've done my share of After Effects things and worked with Premiere, and I'm sorry, those Adobe products are just such a shit show that it blew my mind that a product like Davinci Resolve is just out there, free to use. Chef kiss perfection, that software, so that helps me a lot with my workflow actually. And then we come to this. Yeah, so in my game I have 3 components. This is how I explain it lately. Zelda Overworld, Metroidvania dungeon labyrinth, and then the dungeons that are sort of like levels, right? And I generally try to have features. If I develop a feature for one component, I don't reuse it in others, let's say. So I have, since I've been working a lot on dungeon stuff, I have a lot of dungeon stuff in place, but I don't want to use it in the overworld. So the overworld needs its own features, let's say, because it just has a different flow to it. And so I wanted to find something new when working on more overworlds beyond the demo. And so I came up with this thing, which is, Miyamoto always comes with these sob stories from his childhood, you know, when he crawled around caves and so on. And like, I was also a kid that was outside a lot, and I think that's a very smart thing to do when crafting experiences, to fish around in memories from your childhood, because those are powerful memories that a lot of people share. So I tried to think of something that stuck with me, and it's like this idea of climbing trees. And so I wanted to think about how I can make that possible for the 3D platforming aspects of my game. So I came up with this here, where you can see the geometry dynamically grows out, and then you jump around on it like really wonky, which is, you know, how I remember this. You jump on a branch, you don't know how stable it is, and so on. I feel like this emotion of somewhat climbing a tree and then barely managing and then being happy when you're on the top comes across quite well with this feature. So I started adding that to my environments, which is basically a new section of the overworld. And yeah, more importantly, what I figured out, and this problem has been building while I've been working on this for years, as you know. I come into these situations quite regularly that things just cover other things in very awkward ways. Generally, I'm of the opinion that as a designer, I want to create environments that don't require you to move the camera. And I might as well explain this here, but I recently replayed the Breath of Fire games, which when they moved to PlayStation, Breath of Fire 3 and 4, they were basically isometric games with a 3D camera that you could move around. And this is as far as isometric visuals went, because after that they died out, because it just wasn't fun, you know. In Breath of Fire 4 in particular, you have these really dense geometric structures like villages and so on, and you constantly have to twist around the camera to find the right angle to maybe see where you're going, and it's just pain in the ass. And I think that's why isometric viewpoints generally died out, because people started playing around with 3D cameras. So it's very important for me to not have a 3D camera, but that leads to the fact that sometimes when I design something, I cannot avoid the fact that it will cover stuff. And you can see here, for example, this tree is very high and it covers an area that is completely unrelated to the tree. And so I had to come up with a solution for that. I pushed this problem away for a very long time, but this is where I realized, okay, we gotta do something, which is simply, you know, developing some script that can make them translucent, which has a lot of little problems, like having to put all of these materials into the transparent mode, and that's a nightmare all by itself. But I intend to use this very sparingly. I don't intend to have my entire game with stuff that covers you and that then has to get translucent. This is more or less for edge cases where I just cannot avoid it, and I think that works quite well. It's quite elegant. So I was working on this area with very organic trees, and as you can see, it really helps navigating this when they get blocked out. But this is not something I want to do everywhere. You see these pine trees that Landstalker used everywhere. That's actually super smart that they figured this out, because they are with their triangular shapes, they just never cover anything, and it's ingenious to figure out that you can put this structure everywhere without creating much visual problems. But when I work with my new trees here, I really had to come up with something else, because I do want to have some areas that look very naturally chaotic, organic. Now, the other important thing that I would say that is now available in demo, actually, if you want to try it out, feel free. It's uploaded on Steam. The combat system gave me a lot of headaches. As I was watching people play it, a lot of stuff didn't really work out the way that I intended. And I've been doing a lot of thinking with this, and there's a cascade of fixes, let's say, to get the battle system in shape. So let's start with the fact that we have a isometric three-dimensional engine. If you think of 2D games, Metroidvania-likes, usually, they afford the player a certain level of control over how they move their character, and it's very binary, right? You go left, you go right. That's how it goes. So you can switch actually very easily, and you have a lot of controls, which I think is why 2D platformers have persisted through the ages. Because you can be very precise in your movement. However, in a three-dimensional space that does not work. I can try to reverse the stick, but I'm always gonna hit the wrong angle, and it's always gonna feel awkward and not at all as accurate as 2D platformers are. So one little thing that I swiped out of Hollow Knight is the fact that you get bumped back a little when you hit the enemy, and that has done a lot to fix the combat, especially with these flying enemies here that you can see in the clip. When you jump towards something and hit it, it's in three-dimensional space, it's just not possible to reliably turn around, and so it always feels a bit wonky. And the fact that you now get bumped back a little bit gives you back a little bit of that precision that you wouldn't have in 3D usually. And that has been working out really well. The other thing that you can see here is that I implemented a short hit stop. It turned out a real stop would have been too extreme, so I turned it, you know, to like I think 30% time scale. So it slows down significantly, but it doesn't completely stop. And so I think it's understood now from just this visual clarity thing that, you know, it's not like the game freezes or something. And then finally, what you can see here is that I reworked the hit effect on top of everything, which is some advice that I plucked out of Sakurai's YouTube videos, which are very helpful and inspiring. And he talks in one of them about effects being too bright. So as you probably know, most of the time when you put effects on the screen, you set your shader to a mode that does addition, right? And if you know a little bit about color theory, you will know that if you add a color to white, it's not gonna get whiter. White is the max. This is the real problem, because my effects tends to disappear in bright areas like outside where I emulate like sunlight. So what Sakurai suggested in one of his videos is that on top of your bright effects you layer negative effects that subtract, and those will then always be visible in bright areas, and so you have both of them covered. And you can see that in this effect here with the dark core, and I actually think it looks pretty slick too. So I'm very happy with how that turned out. But it took a couple of tries. So all of that together, I hope fixes the combat. At least it does for me. When I watch it now, I'm actually very happy with how it's going. So yeah, one more new feature. If you look here. And you've played my demo, you will notice, wait, there was a chest there before. Well, it's not anymore. So when building levels, especially a new outside area that I was working on, I noticed if I want to add pickups, it's gonna be treasure chests. And then I had like 10 treasure chests in this one area. And it really devalues the emotion of finding a treasure chest, which is, I would say, supposed to be the core of my experience. So this has been on my mind for a very long time, and I found a solution a long time ago, in 2022, let's say, when the last 3D Kirby game came out. And I feel that game had a very elegant solution to this, because ultimately it's about looking at the screen, and if the treasure chest is there, your eye focuses on it, you found it, all you care about is how to get there, and it completely determines the rhythm of how you experience the world. And I don't like that. That's not what discovery feels like. Discovery means, you know, you can miss something on the way. And So what this Kirby game does, and I've reproduced that for myself because I like it a lot, is when you get close to something hidden, it sparkles in the air, and then you can pick it up, which gives me a lot of freedom for cool design stuff, and I don't have to fill everything with treasure chests and basically just create a visual to-do list. Here there used to be the treasure chest, and then players would focus, how do I get there? Now there's nothing, and that means your eye isn't drawn there, and a lot of people will just pass by this area now, which is exactly what I intended. Only the curious types will look at it and then maybe explore it and jump around and then see there's this sparkle, and then they become curious to find out how can I climb this structure. And this is how I want this flow to go. Finally, I did some stuff like making the chickens interactable because everyone wants to be able to hit them. And then I did one more thing that was very important to me personally, because I saw some players do this, which is jump around on the bed. So I really wanted to make them bouncy. That is sort of the right that you have as a single developer, that you can say, well, today we're just sitting down and we're making the beds bouncy because fun is important, and I don't care if this is not gonna sell more copies, but I don't have to explain that to anyone. One little thing that I would like to bring up, which has been, so a lot of players noticed that my demo came out without the keyboard controls, and that wasn't an accident. That was because I don't think it's a very complex design problem to solve, which I don't think people even realize, but you know, at this point I'm like, just let them play it, I don't care. The problem is, since in my end game, in my isometric game, you mostly move around in a diagonal way, that becomes very clunky on the keyboard, where you always have to press 2 buttons to go diagonal. Not very fun. I tried it out, I hate it. So I was thinking, you know, maybe we should implement it like this, where the diagonals are represented by the keys. But the feedback I got immediately was like, this is not a standard layout, we hate this, we don't want this. Well, okay, peasants, then press your 2 buttons to move, and okay, no problem. In the future, of course, I want to make this configurable, and then maybe I can slip in this suggestion in the settings, but ultimately I'm just happy you can now experience the demo with the keyboard, because Steam sadly has 80% of players without gamepad, which is not good for my business, and another keen reminder that honestly I'm making a console game, which is something I have to consider one day. And that brings me to my final point, which is this year I have one more event planned, which is the Vienna Game City, which is the biggest event in this country. As I said, I'm not expecting, you know, players there to find my game. It's more that I have a new version of my demo and I can test it with people there again, which is handy, and after that I think I will withdraw back into my cave and stay here and work on the game instead of running around shaking hands needlessly. Yeah, I think that's about the extent of what I wanted to talk about today. That's the things I've been working on, and I'm very confident now with how the battle system has evolved, and some of these exploration things. Those are all things that add a lot of fun to the game, and I can't wait to design more levels with it. Alright, and thanks for watching, and play the demo, and wish list, of course. You always have to put call to actions at the end of every video. That makes all the difference. Oh yeah, and subscribe and like, and but now of course I'm now making the mistake of putting too many. I can only expect a viewer to do one thing. Okay, bye bye.